Hey guys, what's the difference between black eyed peas and chickpeas?
Chickpeas are better live.
No. Black eyed peas can sing us a song. Chickpeas can only hum us one.
Oh my gosh.
All right, we have, it's been an interesting week. There's the usual stuff, but then there's some really interesting things like the Zoom, the clickbait story. We'll get to that in a minute, but
It's right up my alley.
all right, so let's start with the Bleeping Computer article. Hacker defaces spyware app's site, dumps database and source code.
Who's the bad guy here?
Yeah, right.
I know, right? Yeah.
Hacker
It's
on
like
hacker violence.
It's a modern day Robin Hood kind of thing.
Hackers defaced the website of PC Tattletale spyware application found on the booking system of several Wyndham hotels in the United States and leaking over dozens of archives containing databases, source code data. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I don't entirely know what the ramifications would be. I mean, I guess it's still illegal to do that.
I mean, PC Tattletale tries to be like watch your kids and watch the nanny and make sure people aren't abusing. But it's spyware.
Yes,
They're selling spyware.
Yeah.
but
So they're a legit company. It's just that they're selling a shady product because of how it can be used.
Right.
yeah, I've recently discovered a serious vulnerability in PC Tattletale's API, allowing an attacker to obtain the most recent screen capture recorded from any device that PC Tattletale is installed on. It is distinct from an iDoor previously discovered by Joe Kosicka and makes it trivial to actually obtain or capture from devices. So an iDoor, for those of you who may not know, this is indirect.
It's one of the moons around Alderaan, isn't it?
Right?
That's not a moon.
I thought it was a new Apple product, like an iWindow. It's an iDoor.
Yeah, I got a T-shirt at Mos Eisley, and then
Most Eisley.
Had a nice house there once.
So no. An iDoor
made of Adobe.
I had
Sorry.
a nice house once. Were you like a moisture farmer?
No, I was a. You were played that game with me. We played Star Wars. Remember?
You remember that thing? I love Star Wars Galaxy.
All right,
It was a lizard.
anyway.
Anyhow,
See what happens.
when you get nerds on the line,
I know.
nerds.
All right, iDoor.
Is insecure direct object access is
Okay.
what iDoor stands for. But for those of you who, have ever gone to a website, let me explain how you might discover an iDoor.
Okay.
Let's say you go to a website and you're surfing products. And you look up that URL bar and you see, www.cheapsharktanks.
Joe's Discount Sharkcages.com.
Joe's Discount Sharktanks.com. And then you see like /product.aspx $ID equals 5.
Yeah.
And you go to the next product and it says 6.
Right.
Okay, well, you can probably guess that 7 might be there.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you put in a -1? Maybe you find a product, that they're trying to keep off the website. Or maybe you put in
Hopefully you
3,000
get a
and you find a
404.
product that hasn't been posted yet. Or you get a 404.
Hopefully.
But hopefully. But in this case, an insecure object access is where you as the user enumerate, whether it's in the URL bar, whether it's in a post request to the web server, but where you can enumerate values and start pulling information out that you shouldn't. So we see this a fair bit with systems that are multi-tenant and multiple customers using the same system.
It's a product of the developers and the network engineers thinking, well, if I don't provide a link to it, they can't get to it.
Right. Well, and not really sanitizing it. They assume that the front end website is always going to make the right request. So let's say, for example, Patrick owns a company, Carl owns a company, and I own a company. We all use the same customer management system that holds our customer data. Well, it would be not great if Carl could open up the app and see my customers, right?
Cross-tenant contamination.
Yes, which is always bad. Nobody wants cross-tenant.
Did I just invent that word, or have I seen that somewhere?
It's pretty good. That sounds invented.
You get a penny every time we use it.
Well, It sounds worse than it actually is, actually.
So let's say Carl goes into his CMS and he says, list all my customers. And when he clicks on a customer, it brings him to the customer whatever page /customer / equals some ID 3001. And then Carl just switches it to 3002 and he pulls up my customer 3003. He pulls up Patrick's customer, right?
Yeah.
And although the UI would have never sent him there, he now has the ability to enumerate every customer in the database.
That's just ridiculous.
This is super common.
It's unbelievable.
Super common. We see it almost every web application we test, we see that.
Just say no.
Wow.
Carl, as the developer, will tell us how to not do this. Carl?
Yeah, I mean, it's called sentries. Hello. You test the value. If first of all, make sure that it's a number, make sure it's greater than 0, and then pull out the product and see if it's in your account or not.
Right.
And you shouldn't even be able to do this because if you're logged in, right? If you're logged in, then you only have access to that data that you have access to. So you shouldn't be able to just query a database and pull up random numbers, especially if it's multi-tenant.
Yeah, and that's a great point.
There's so many dumb things about this that it just blows my mind.
It happens
Now you're getting
all the time. Yeah, and it's a great point though too, Carl, is like, hey, you're expecting a number. Why don't you check, I don't know, to see if it's a number. Many times we'll just put a tick in there.
Yeah.
Because most of the time that your SQL statement is going to be like select star from customers where customer ID equals, right? And then there's that number there. And if I put a character instead, we'll start to see database errors and it'll show us what database is being used on the back end. Sometimes we even see the entire SQL query pop up on the screen saying, oh, well, I tried to do this select Mr. Joe user of the CMS.
Jeez.
And this is the error I got, which is...
It's like somebody copied and pasted code out of a 1990s MSDN article or something. You know.
So needless to say, if you are using PC Tattletale for some particular reason, I guess you should go patch
or use something else.
There's a number of solutions out there that say, "Oh, we're here for these uses, and you should only use it for these uses." There was a company that made really good software for testing the back end. And the guy who founded the company was really careful about making sure it was never weaponized and that only the right people got it. And they'd like blackball a customer if they thought that your use case was hinky or your license was used somewhere weird. And then as soon as he sold the company, it started being used everywhere in hacking. And so it's only as good as the measures that you
Wait, Patrick, what is that product?
I don't think I should say the name.
Nice try, Dwayne. Nice try.
No, but this is another of those products where, like Pegasus software out of Israel, is spyware. Governments buy it. They believe that it might have even been used. I think I heard something about it might have been used by the Saudis to killing that journalist Khashoggi.
So this is the one that you can send a message to somebody and they don't even have to open it. It will own their phone.
And it's a moving target. That was a point in time, and that is a common thing they try to get to. But it's a game of cat and mouse. They're always trying to get the new exploits, and it depends on when we are. The best thing to prevent that is probably lockdown mode on like an iPhone or some other like really outrageous security setting. But that's what that lockdown mode is meant for. But there's a lot of these companies that make a software and they say, well, we're not responsible for someone using this in ways they shouldn't use it. But it's kind of a cop out. And the fact that this company, PC Tattletale, won't engage with these ethical hackers is a part of the problem.
You know what the problem is? The users didn't put their phone in ludicrous mode.
Right? Like Patrick did.
Mine's in ludicrous mode all the time.
Ludicrous mode. Yeah.
You joke, but I'm still there. I'm still living in that mode.
All right.
There's still only one website and one app that have ever been exempted.
Is it Pokemon Go?
Maybe I just...
Yeah, Patrick, you must just have a big target on your back. I don't know.
I have the usage profile of a 90-year-old woman. I only do what my mother would do.
Which is nothing. In my mother's case.
Very, very little. Very little. Oh, actually, I have to tell people this. There's a new mode in iOS 17 where you can put the phone into not a single application mode, but a assisted mode is I think what they call it. So you can put a couple of applications on the phone and they're very big buttoned and it's kind of like a jitterbug mode.
Huh. Super ludicrous mode.
Ooh,
Yeah, my mother has that and it makes the phone much more usable for someone who's not a technophile.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
I thought so.
Yeah. And just from experience dealing with elderly parents that can't figure out their phones, they don't even want to use them anymore. Because you pick them up and you touch them and they're like...
Yeah, they're in a wrong place. So it solved a lot of problems for my mother.
All right. Enough on this one. Should we move on to the next one? GitLab?
Let's do it.
All right. High severity GitLab flaw lets attackers take over accounts. For those who don't know, GitLab is kind of like a GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a different product.
Yep.
But that's the kind of product it is.
So this is our
source control.
This is our PSA for people running GitLab. If you're running version 15.11, 16.11, or 17.0 pre-1701, you are affected. So potential consequences: an attacker who successfully exploits this, which this is a cross-site scripting vulnerability, would be able to craft a specialized request allowing the disclosure of sensitive information. This can lead to account takeover. So what typically people do with cross-site scripting is, in this particular case, I would be able to inject into a place on the website some JavaScript code, for example. And then anybody viewing that particular GitLab repo would then, the JavaScript would run, it would pull potentially their credentials, could pull cookies, that would authenticate me as them onto the site, that sort of stuff. So this is definitely an important one.
So they're not using the XSRF token mechanism.
Heck no.
That modern websites use for anti-forgery.
Yeah, and there's ways around that.
Don't tell us, Dwayne. He's look at him. He's so smug. He's got his hands in the back of his head. He's leaning back in his chair.
Explain.
He's so ready to just yeah. He's so ready to just spill the beans.
There's all sorts of really great ways to pull information.
Okay, all right.
All sorts of fun stuff.
You're crazy, but so what's the takeaway for this patch?
Yeah, go patch.
All right.
Yep, that was our go patch of the week.
Yep.
Actually, a lot of them end up being go patch, but go patch.
All right. Hacker News reports TP-Link gaming router vulnerability exposes users to remote code attacks. This thing looks like a drone.
I was gonna say, I love how that looks like a spider that's dead with its legs.
Yeah, dead spider with its legs sticking up. Yeah.
Up in the air.
I'm looking for the propellers.
So awesome. So this vulnerability is tracked as CVE 2024-5035.
All right, wait. First of all, what's the difference between a gaming router and, let's say, a line of business router?
About $100.
All right, but no, seriously, is it that it's supposed to have higher throughput for games that do real-time stuff?
So
I mean, come on.
It's the same difference as extra strength and migraine strength.
All right, so it's got blinky lights, so the gamer can...
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of times what will happen is they will QoS game traffic out of the box.
Okay.
And all that means
and
is...
what that prioritizes the packets.
Yeah, game traffic gets prioritized. So your Xboxes, your whatever, or Steam, all of that would get prioritized on the network just in case you're running out of bandwidth. But if you have plenty of bandwidth, honestly, there's no...
And Dad's
really
trying to edit a spreadsheet and he's like, damn it, why is the Wi-Fi so slow?
Exactly. Now, there are like...
Have you seen Junior's grades?
That's what the spreadsheet is. I'm trying to look up Junior's grades and it's too slow. What is he doing down there? Okay, I'm sorry, Dwayne. As usual.
No, it's fine. It's okay. All right. So this is CVE 2024-5035 with a...
Whoa, it's a 10.
I was going to say with a CVSS score of a perfect 10.
Yikes.
Yeah. Impacts all router versions prior to 1_1.1.6. So you really do need to patch. By successfully exploiting this flaw, remote unauthenticated attackers can gain arbitrary command execution on the device with elevated privileges.
Now, how likely, if you were going to give it a contagion score, Dwayne?
Yeah.
What do you think it would be? I mean, if you get it, it's actually, a 10, but how likely are you to get hacked?
I like this. Let's work through this one together.
All right.
So, okay, it says the issue is rooted in a binary related to radio frequency testing, RF testing. This launched on startup exposes a network listener. So, okay, router boots up.
Mm-hmm.
So we already know one of the conditions has to be met. The router has to be coming online.
Okay.
So it's not, if I'm running right now, etc., it probably has already shut this listener off.
So power goes out, let's say.
Power goes out.
And then the power comes back on, it comes back online.
Okay, so now we know there's one condition that has to be met. And how often do our routers go offline? Probably not that often. So we've already mitigated a little bit of risk automatically. Right. So when it launches at startup and exposes a network listener to TCP port 888, 889, 890. Okay, so that doesn't say much, right? The ports don't matter, but I can tell you, being a hacker who does go through what's called recon, or reconnaissance phase in hacking.
Like a port scan kind of thing?
Yeah, port scanning. These are not common ports. It's not 80, 443, 445, 139. It's like 888 and 8889 are not super normal.
But it's still under 1,000, so it's pretty... if you're going through a list, it won't take long to get there.
But if you take a look at Nmap, which most people will be using, even the top 1,000 ports, I bet don't include these ports.
And what Carl might not realize is that when you're doing packet scanning, when you're doing port scanning, you can't typically do 65,000 unless you're going after a specific target.
Okay.
Like most people don't do port scanning of the looking for targets and scan all 65,000 possible ports. They scan the first 1,000. Yeah. So that's what you're getting at, Dwayne, is that it's not in the most common ports people would scan for.
I got you.
Right. Exactly.
So
it's okay. So we already know there's one thing that needs to be done, right? Router needs to bounce. We know that there's less likely ports to discover, but still may be discovered. So let's keep walking through this. So it's a 10, but we're maybe knocking a little shine off that 10. Maybe it's not so bad.
Well, I think there's two scores here, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the thing that I've been talking about, right? We give it has a score of 10 if you get it. But now the question is, how likely on a scale of 1 to 10 are you going to be to get it? So I call that like a,
you're right.
Contagion score.
They don't differentiate that. There's only one score. There
I know, but our listeners will. I mean, that's what we're trying to break down.
Yeah.
So it has to boot up. Those ports have to be available, and then someone has to connect to it, right?
Well, yeah, and then there's even more. So while the network service is designed to only accept commands that start with the letters WL or NVRAM get. Those are the only things you could send to it. WL or NVRAM get.
And these are UDP?
TCP. One key, which is the research company, security researchers that found that the restrictions could be trivially bypassed by injecting a command after shell meta characters. For example, the and symbol, the or symbol. There's a bunch of different wilds you can put into different commands, right? So they're saying, okay, we could actually put W, for example, we could put WL, whatever that command does, we don't know, and frankly, we don't care. Semicolon ID. Now in Unix, ID is going to spit out your ID. Who are you, right? So what they're doing is they're stacking commands. They're issuing the WL commands so that the router's happy, but the router doesn't actually look to see, is there another command in here? It just runs the whole stack.
Okay, there's another critical piece of information. Does this hack have to occur within the firewall?
Well,
behind the firewall, or from the internet?
Right. So let's keep reading.
Okay.
So it seems the need to provide a wireless device configuration API TP-Link answers either faster cheap. Oh, no, that's not going to help us. This disclosure revives not going to help us. Right. So in this particular case, they say nothing about whether this is internal, this is external. Now, typically something like this would only be allowed internal.
That's what I'm thinking. So you have to have a hacker in your building when the power comes back on, know that you have a TP link, and then has to connect to it and issue the right command from inside the firewall. That's what I think.
Right. And if I take a look at one of the neat things here is and one of the things I'd love, when our listeners actually see a CVE and we post them and that sort of stuff, there's always a link to NIST, NIST.gov. And you can read literally the disclosure to NIST, where the CVE came from and whether they've actually done vulnerability testing or not. So according to NIST, the affected devices exposes a network service called RF test. We know that. Mm-hmm. This is vulnerable to an unauthenticated command injection on port 888-8889-8890. By successfully exploiting this flaw, remote unauthenticated attackers can gain arbitrary command execution on devices with elevated privileges. Oh. The issue affects the Archer C4500X. Which is a chipset.
So you can hack it from outside the firewall.
Right. So this now just jumped back up into probably pretty serious.
Yeah, that's pretty serious.
So this is just one of the reasons I want to go through this exercise. This is one of the things we do at Security This Week is really kind of look at an exploit like this that's being dubbed as, earth shattering, and then say, well, okay, how bad is it really? Do you really need to worry about it? In this particular case,
how likely are you to be vulnerable to it?
Right, exactly. And in this particular case,
or how likely are you to catch it?
I think we could all agree, yeah, this one's pretty important, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So if you are running this, I would absolutely rush to go patch, because you know that there will be the dark hackers out there scanning the internet looking for these ports now.
Yeah. If it wasn't remotely attackable.
That's a big deal. That's the big part of it.
Then I wouldn't worry so much about it.
Yeah, exactly. Carl, you're absolutely right. Like, the fact that it's remotely accessible makes this instantly more important.
That's right.
If it were only exploitable on the local network, I probably would have given it like a 5.
Now, they said that it only affects this gaming router, but TP-Link makes other things like Wi-Fi extenders and all sorts of things like that. That it has nothing. Those are still secure, right?
Well, that's an interesting question, because you would assume that a vendor like this would want to reuse a lot of the architecture and chipsets and that sort of stuff so that they get economies of scale. So does that mean that if the three of us were to buy a whole different type of TP-Link products and analyze them, we might not find this issue? Actually, I'm betting we probably will. We would find this issue in another device as well.
Well, okay. If I have a Wi-Fi extender, it is working inside the firewall.
Yes.
So I think anything that works just inside the firewall is probably safe. But because this router is exposed to a public IP address, I think therein lies the problem.
So do we think it requires remote admin in order for it to be vulnerable remotely, or it's just vulnerable remotely? Because I didn't see anything.
No, it just says unauthenticated command injection.
Yeah, so that's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. Because we recommend you do not enable external management of your router for exactly this reason. You don't want people walking by the street and being able to poke at it and give it commands.
Yeah.
Dwayne, what kind of car do you drive?
I drive.
I just want to make sure.
What's that? Me? Yeah, I know, right? I'm out front. Hey, if you see a 15-year-old Honda Odyssey out in your driveway, you'll know.
Wait, I have a 15-year-old Honda Odyssey. Wait a minute. No, I don't. All right. Let's take a break, I guess, and we'll be right back after these very important messages. So don't go away. And we're back. You're listening to Security This Week. I'm Carl Franklin. That's Dwayne LaFlotte and Patrick Hines, the brains of this operation. And we have a quick one about a supply chain attack, and then a few others before we're done today. Tell me about this supply chain attack against courtroom software.
This one's neat. So this is on Schneier's website. Mm-hmm. So Bruce Schneier, I'm sure we've talked about it in the past. Brilliant.
Worthy of following.
Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant guy, honestly, in cyber and crypto and all things, around that.
Bruce asked a lot of questions early on, like, can you make security engineers, or do they have to be like broken already?
Plus, I like his hat. It's got a cool hat.
He's a dapper.
He's a very dapper guy. Yeah.
So what's interesting is usually when I see him blog something about cybersecurity, it's usually it's not like every day he's posting something out there saying, oh my gosh, this is bad and this is bad. So when he posts it, usually it's pretty important. Yeah.
Unlike us, he waits to have something to say.
So in this particular one,
tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely
I can't
right.
argue. Yeah.
He posts supply chain attack against courtroom software. No word yet on how this backdoor was installed, but a software maker serving more than 10,000 courtrooms through the world hosted an application update containing a hidden backdoor that maintained persistent communications with a malicious website, researchers reported on Thursday. In the last episode of a supply chain attack, the software known as JAVS Viewer 8, is a component of the JAV Suite 8, an application package courtrooms use to record, playback, and manage audio and video proceedings.
So why couldn't CNN get a hold of this stream and use that instead of taking pictures?
A felony.
Oh, yeah,
Exactly.
I guess you're right.
So you can imagine how many bad actors may or may not want either access to what's happening in a courtroom
but drug lords don't have any money. Wait a minute. Scratch that.
Yeah. So needless to say, 10,000 courtrooms. That is...
Wow.
That's a lot. This company, interestingly enough, has been in business for 35 years. The company that provides this software. And that's the other interesting thing.
That's why the site is written completely in VB script.
With a smattering of COBOL. Yeah, no, it's interesting when we start to see like really old companies who've been doing the job for a long time, coming up to speed, bringing new digital, hey, we have this new software that does whatever, XYZ. And a lot of times it comes with technical debt, right? A lot of the companies that were doing things 20 years ago, when they entered into the digital world, they created this thing that would help them, be competitive. And they just keep stacking feature on feature on feature on feature, right? And nobody goes back and makes sure, hey, is it secure? Was it designed securely?
So that's great, but let's go back, and I think you define technical debt, but let's make sure people understand what we're talking about. When I have a solution, I can very often solve the solution multiple ways. One way is the right way, which will not incur any technical debt and will get us the best solution, but it takes longer than the quicker solution, which will get us to market faster. And management almost always picks the quicker solution, and we'll go back and fix that stuff later. That's the debt.
Right. Anytime you say, we'll fix that later,
that's debt.
Those things pile up.
Yeah.
Those are things that have to be done eventually.
And we have a term that I've heard, I don't know if it's a legit term, but it's called declaring technical bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's where
too
you
much
have to
debt. Start over. You have to throw the solution away and start over, or abandon it. And many people get to that point, and then do not realize it, and then they become a backdoor for their industry.
Wow. Yikes. All right, let's talk about Okta. OKTA, Okta. So
they have a customer identity cloud feature.
Yeah. And
it's being targeted with credential stuffing. We've talked about credential stuffing in the past.
Yes.
Credential stuffing is an attack where I find out that you use a password that uses the word dragon everywhere from the dark web. Think of our friend Troy Hunt and his Have I Been Pwned database. Hackers have databases of that ilk as well. And I find out what kind of passwords you might like. Maybe you like the Red Sox, or you're into surfing, or I've heard, Carl, you like the music.
Yeah, but my passwords are all blue.
Well, if I can find a password that you've used in the past, then I can put it into your account, and I might get lucky.
You might.
And you are well trained now.
You might have it. You might.
Am I getting that right, Dwayne? I'm not password spray versus password stuffing. Am I getting it right?
Oh yeah. You're good.
Well, this is for people who use passwords that are actually made of words. right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all my passwords now are big, long,
it's reuse.
cryptical strings.
Exactly. It's more about reuse. If your password has been leaked or a strategy you use to pick passwords has been
what I'm saying is I use a password manager now. All my passwords have nothing to do with words.
Right.
They're all just gobbledygook.
They're just all garbage.
But if you
25 characters, whatever.
If you let the password manager, generate your passwords, you're unlikely to ever have a duplicate, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
If, however, you have passwords, maybe you got a really long password, you got a really strong password, and you reuse it.
Yeah.
That's where this comes in effect. Because if you, like, maybe your bank got nailed and they didn't fully disclose the breach, or you didn't realize you reused that password,
right?
And maybe it's a strong passphrase. It can be very strong. It could still be on the dark web, and that's what makes it vulnerable.
Right, if you reuse it, yeah. Another reason why our listeners use a password manager.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much more to say. This supply chain stuff, if Checkpoint is not Checkpoint. Okta is an important part of authentication systems, and so anytime there's a vulnerability there, you know that it's probably part of the supply chain, and that's a word we're using over and over again. Hackers are finding that a lot of the meteor targets they're after are well protected, zero trust, really extreme measures, and the easiest way in the door is through some vendor back end.
Okay. And you mentioned Checkpoint, and because that's the next story, this is something that I thought was pretty cool. So, and it's written really well, by the way. It's very Clifford Stoll ease, So Checkpoint is a vendor responsible for the CloudGuard network security appliance, and they crowed that their slogan, "You deserve the best security," implies they're a company you can trust. A bold claim, the author says. And then to see if they really are, they took one of these things and pulled it apart, kind of like Dwayne on a Saturday.
Right.
And what happened?
So these, I actually, there's a couple reasons why I wanted this article included this week. First off, it does actually show a really good process for discovering vulnerabilities. And sometimes those are 0 days or O days. We've talked about these. These are ones where, you're a researcher, you take any piece of hardware, software, and you literally tear it down to its assembly bits, and you find out what you might be able to exploit that nobody's ever seen before, and then you exploit it. And that's a 0 day. Nobody's seen it. It's not patched. You have something that will work on every version of that, system that has that functionality. The next sort of thing past O day is what they call a 1 day. And what a 1 day is the vendor knows about the issue. The vendor has already patched the issue. A patch has been released for the issue. And then what hackers will do is take the patch, reverse engineer the patch, because it's way easier to look at a small patch than it is to look at the entire software. And they will see what was patched. They'll say, "Oh, I see what they did. I see what they fixed. I see the new check they added."
And therefore exposes the vulnerability.
Exactly. And now they go, "I know how to now exploit this." And they go target the people who haven't patched yet.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting process of them going through, looking at these checkpoint devices and firewalls and VPNs and that sort of stuff. And inconsequentially here, I mean, this is a vulnerability. You should patch. The vulnerability does allow an attacker to read information on the internet gateway. If you have remote access VPN on or mobile access. So if you have those on, an attacker can actually read sensitive information. But that being said, what I wanted us to do is, or our listeners to be able to do, is literally read through this. And you're right, Carl, this is actually a really easy read. Lots of times when I see like 1 day diffing, patch diffing, they call it. It's really hard. They go really quickly into the assembly and like
PhD level.
Right. And they're like, "Oh, see this move EAX, yaza, now I got him." And you're like, "Okay, why exactly is that?"
They don't go step by step. They like, "Okay, how did you know to go from that to that?"
Right.
This one is much better about that. And those are the ones you want to seek out.
Yep.
Right. So it is interesting to see, in this particular article, they'll show, hey, this was pre-patch. This was post-patch. And here's the differences. And here's what that said to us and how we were going to manipulate it. And what's really cool is it also shows the same frustrating process / mindset of all of us who do reverse engineering, where you go, aha, I think I can do this thing. So later on in the document, they talk about directory traversal. And a directory traversal, by jumping outside of a restricted area where I could do things like .. // We've talked about that with web servers. They're really good at mitigating that. And they said, reading through the code, it's possible for directory traversal. And when you see them attempt it, it didn't work. And we're like, well, crap, it didn't work. That sucks. But they kept digging into the code and said, oh, no, wait. What if we add these special characters in front? What if we add a valid directory before we do the directory traversal? And ultimately, they were able to get it to work. Wow. They were actually able to jump outside of the served up directory and pull any file, including the Etsy password file, all sorts of other things on the system. So, yeah, they were able to pull the shadow password. So for those of you who are Linux nerds like me, right, you have /etc, we call Etsy's, so /etc/PASSWD. So on a Linux system, that file contains all of the users that are allowed to log into the system. And in the olden days, it used to also contain a hash of the user's password. So it was a real easy way for you to grab that information. And what really sucked in the Linux world was that it was world readable. Anybody on the planet could read that file.
Yikes.
So the problem is you could grab their root user and their hash, go crack it offline with something like, John the Ripper or whatever, and then come back and...
All right. Does that warrant the music? John the Ripper. You just mentioned the hacking tool.
This is so basic. It's like...
All right. We won't play the music this time.
Okay. So they, Linux system said, we need to be more secure about where we keep these hashes. So what they did is they kept this PASSWD file and they took the hash for the password and they moved it into what's called a shadow file in the same directory. And only the system and root level users have access to it.
I thought you were going to say only the shadow knows.
Only
what
the shadow
lurks in the hearts of men.
So in this particular case,
there's a lot of old callbacks in this episode.
I know, jeez.
That was before my time too. That was something my father used to say to me. So
yeah, Patrick. Patrick's older than both Carl and I. Carl and I are like in our mid-20s for those of you who've never seen us.
Yeah, maturity-wise, I agree.
I'm on the other side of 29.
The other side of 20. So needless to say, in this particular patch, they actually discovered that they not only could they get a directory traversal working where they could jump outside of the directory they were supposed to be in, but they could also make a request to the shadow file. And the shadow file, like I said, is only the most privileged users have access to it. So they now instantly know they're running as system level privileges as root. So,
yeah.
So
weird.
Moral of that story, go patch, but this is an interesting story that you absolutely should come and just take a read through to see what reverse engineering looks like. It's a great read.
Yeah. Yep. It's entertaining as well as it's infotainment.
That's true. If you are interested in reads like this, there's a YouTuber, this guy named Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow? Yeah, it's Stack Overflow. His process for he takes CVEs sometimes and he breaks them down, or he'll take a system and try and hack it. Sometimes it's Minecraft server. Sometimes it's, some enterprise production software. But it's very cool to watch his process because it's very much like this read, but in real time. You watch him go, I tried this and I don't know, it didn't work. Or this section of code here that we're looking at, I don't know what the hell it does. So let's research it. And he looks it up on Wiki and whatever. He's fantastic.
It's a very unfortunate name for a YouTuber because Stack Overflow happens to be one of the most popular websites. That is not...
Well, no, not Stack Overflow. It's not Stack Overflow. It's Live Overflow.
Live Overflow.
Live Overflow. Stack Overflow is the website. You are correct. No, Live Overflow.
Because I did a quick search while you were talking, and I didn't find anything except lots of Stack Overflow stuff. Live Overflow.
Yeah. No, Live Overflow. This guy's fantastic. Honestly, the way he breaks down problems, everything from the pseudo edit bug that was pretty huge, etc. He goes through like, well, how would I have discovered this? And he writes fuzzers and he does whatever. And he's like, well, that didn't work and that didn't work. And oh, wait, I see this weird thing, but I don't know what the heck it does. And he just goes and researches it just like if we were, on this trying to break something down. But yeah, Live Overflow. He's awesome.
All right.
Fantastic.
I put the link in there. It's the last one in the list, but you'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Shall we?
Yep. Let's do it.
All right. Let's do it. All right. So the article is Zoom adds quote unquote post-quantum encryption for video nattering. First of all, Patrick, I know you're going to talk about what post-quantum is. We've talked about it before.
Yep.
But what is nattering?
I took it to mean just talking.
Oh, okay.
They nattered on. I think it's...
Oh, all right. So somebody at the register is trying to take a little poetic license.
Exactly, yeah. So I think maybe there's a term that we don't know about that the kids are using.
Right.
But here's the deal. So what I don't like about this article is the attitude of if it ever comes. And maybe they have the right to that opinion, but I think it's a dangerous opinion. Quantum computing, and if those you don't know, I host a quantum podcast called Entangled Things on Quantum Computing. Mm-hmm. It is moving along. I'm not saying it's going to be here tomorrow, but we're coming to a point where by the end of this decade, we're going to be either at or in short order, we're going to be getting to the point where quantum computers will be able to run what's called Shor's algorithm. And Shor's algorithm is the thing that makes RSA, Diffie-Hellman, elliptical curve encryption vulnerable. And they did talk about in this article harvest now, decrypt later. Harvest now, decrypt later is the technique that they're seeing organizations like the Chinese military, the Russian military employ, because they believe that in the next 10 years or less, they'll be able to decrypt that data and those secrets are worth having. Now, if you don't have secrets worth 5 years, 3 years, you probably don't need to worry about this. But if you're having a discussion about something, you want to stay secret for a longer haul, then this is of interest. And Signal's done it. They did it last year. Basically, what they're doing is they're using the new protocols that NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, have approved, specifically Crystal's Kyber. For those Star Wars fans will love that name, to do the end-to-end encryption that is shown or believed to be quantum safe. In other words, it doesn't have the vulnerability that RSA and others have to a quantum algorithm developed by an MIT professor named Peter Shor.
So it says here that it will encrypt calls and other data so that they're resistant to being forcibly decrypted by some future super powerful quantum computer that can undo today and yesterday's cryptography.
So one thing to understand, Dwayne and I talk about quantum all the time, not quantum, about encryption all the time. We've been talking about it for decades because we're just that boring. And the thing about encryption that nobody gets is encryption is based on problems that are hard to do one way, but easy to do the other. That's the basis. That's the basis of a really good encryption mechanism. Is it's easy to do it this way, but it's really hard to do it the other way without all the secrets. And that's the basis of things. The problem with all encryption of that type is
it's convenient.
No, the big problem is we never know if someone will suddenly come up with a way to do it, to reverse it easily. And if they do, we're all hosed.
Yeah.
So if Peter Shor hadn't come up with his encryption, his algorithm, until a year after there were powerful enough quantum computers to break RSA, we'd probably still be using RSA. And so we're lucky that the algorithm to break that encryption came up before the computers were readily available. Otherwise, we'd be living in a world where suddenly all encryption didn't work and we had no time to fix it.
Yeah.
The good news is we have time to fix it. Zoom is paying attention to this. Signal's paying attention to this. And organizations that have secrets worth keeping need to pay attention to this. Because you're not going to fix this in a day, a week, a month. It's going to take the better part of a year to even figure out where you're using this kind of encryption.
What about standard SSL, TLS encryption that websites use for end-to-end?
That is very vulnerable to this. The thing about it is, I don't think the Chinese army cares whether you bought 3 or 4 polos, through your shopping
You don't
cart.
know that.
Well, no,
Your
but
credit card will be protected for a while. It's the longer term stuff right now, because I can attest that I don't believe there's a quantum computer that could break RSA 2048 right now, but I won't say that I believe that that's not going to be the case by 2030. So there is time, especially for shorter term things. That we've talked to people on the podcast, entangledthings.com, about crypto. Some cryptocurrencies have moved over to these quantum safe algorithms. And there's also hybrid mechanisms where you can use both the old and the new to get double encryption. So that's a strategy that's been around for a long time. As you encrypt it multiple times, now it's like layers of an onion. You got to break this encryption just to be faced with another encryption. I think it was pioneered in D&D.
Okay.
But I like the article. I like the fact that Zoom is doing this. I think it's important for people to get to understand that they need to evaluate what their vulnerabilities are and use vendors that are forward thinking like this. I don't like the snarky, it's always 10 years away, because I think that misses the point. The point is,
you should be ready before it happens.
Computers now,
That all being said, quantum's not real.
By definition.
Dwayne, see me in the conference.
Just by saying quantum.
See me in the conference room.
Is it a quantum conference room?
It is. It's a labyrinth of pain.
You get all entangled in there.
Oh. Hey, and while you were talking about this interesting quantum article, I was zoning out and reading Twitter and got 4 more notifications of people exploiting this checkpoint bug we were just talking about.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty active right now. I know we said read the article for the enjoyment, but go patch first.
Patch first, read later. I like that. That's our slogan for 2024. All right. Thanks a lot for listening. And I guess that's a show. We'll see you next week, right?
Yep.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.